She's a TV star, a Broadway star, a best-selling author, a wife, and a mom. She's gifted with the memory of a superhero and the energy of a teenager. Now, here's Marilu Henner.
I'm Marilu, and I'm so glad you're here. Okay, up with us next, we have Linton Bergsen. He's an author of the book Purposeful Vision. See your vision, know your purpose. Up next. You're listening to the Marilu Henner Show. I'm Marilu.
Yes, it is, because when you see something in your imagination, it allows you to begin to connect to possibilities that you necessarily would not have dreamed of before. So really what your imagination is the ability to dream, to see something that you would like to have happen in your life before it's manifested itself. So if you can't see it, like designing a kitchen or anything like that, you can't begin to make it happen. So you have to have a visual to say, I can connect to this and I can bring it into reality.
How did you figure this out? Was it something, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer for because you look at people out there and think, okay, well, they probably envisioned that they would do this or this or this. But was it something that you came to as a personal revelation?
Yes, what happened with me was that I'm very connected to my feelings. And so what happened with me was that I did and do have visions. I can see and feel things as they're meant to be for me. And as I visualize, I begin to feel something awaken within me, begin to arouse. Now, we can have different terms for that, a spiritual awakening, a calling, a little voice. But as my imagination and that little voice connect, I begin to follow it. Mm-hmm. It's like an intuition. And then as I follow it, and I don't doubt it, it begins to manifest.
So are we all our own psychics in a way? And then we make them happen? Kind of a, kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, but you have to have the prophecy to begin with?
Absolutely. We have the ability, Marilu, without any question at all, to tap into this potential, this intuition, and we doubt it, you see. Mm-hmm. And the reason that we doubt it is because intuition has no logic. It requires you to act on faith. And one of the things I mentioned in my book is in order to do that, Marilu, you have to have mastered a certain amount of yourself. You have to have great personal leadership, which means that you're not going to be dissuaded by people who say that you cannot do something because you believe in yourself, because you have created stretch goals that have allowed you to do that. So you know what you can do. You don't think what you can do.
Right. Now, there are some people, who grew up in very difficult situations, have become superstars and have achieved greatness. And you talk to them and they, sometimes they say, oh, well, I had to prove my father wrong. Or my mother, she was miserable and she was not happy and she was never, there, or she was never encouraging, and I had to do something for myself. I basically raised myself. When you think about people who are achieving what you are helping people achieve, are there the people who have just done this already, is there a pattern to their early lives? Is it something anyone can do no matter what kind of upbringing they had?
Yes, it is. It's something anyone can do, but you have to choose to work on yourself to do it because there's no easy fix. We all have childhoods. We all have issues in our lives. We can choose one of two things, to succumb to them or overcome them. And there's only two types of people, those who choose to succumb and those who choose to overcome. The question becomes which one and who do you want to be? That comes back to your personal leadership, the choices you make.
Right. So you have to envision it first. All right. So I know somebody that really wanted to be very successful in show business. He wanted to really achieve something, and he would compare himself to a lot of the great achievers in show business. And he always felt in his own mind that he had fallen short. And no matter what kind of success he achieved, it was never enough. It was never satisfying enough. It was never, compared to other people that he held up to be, like the pinnacle of his part of his career in show business. It was never something that he could see himself doing. So, you can't have a world full of I don't know, you can't have a world full of Justin Timberlakes or Steven Spielbergs or Oprahs or whatever. So what do you say to people who say, I wanted to be Steven Spielberg, I wanted to be Justin Timberlake, I wanted to be Oprah, and no matter where they are, they have fallen short in their own minds? Do you know what I'm saying? Is it that those people just imagined that they would succeed and that was their version of succeeding? But what about all the other people? You can't have a world full of all those top achievers.
No, but the first thing you have to be, and what I tell people, is be happy with yourself. Don't try and be or try and imitate or want to be someone else. That's ridiculous. You can't be someone else. You're unique. You've got to learn to be happy with who you are. If you're not Oprah and you wanted to be Oprah, then there's something innately wrong with yourself, because you can't keep chasing the cat's tail. You have to say, I'm happy with who I am, my accomplishments. I don't want to be anyone else. I'm happy with who I am. Right. The minute we start comparing ourselves to other people and other things, well, that can go on forever. Where does that end?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know. You know, when you're comparing yourself to Steven Spielberg and you're a director, you might always have a problem, you know. It's especially if it's. I always believe that it's like a swimmer. If a swimmer is always looking over their shoulder at the other people swimming, and they're not just focused on their lane and reaching that wall, you know, let's say a competitive swimmer, then they've lost all kinds of time, you know.
But one of the things, Marilu, to take into account in that type of thought is this: we look at other people, we may say, well, I'd like to be that person. But we really don't know that person's life. We don't know all the idiosyncrasies and intricacies of that person's life. Would you really want to be that person? Right. Are we looking at that from a materialistic standpoint, a spiritual standpoint?
Mm-hmm. Right.
It usually means that they've achieved an outer goal, but what about the inner workings? We don't know.
Right. Well, I want to talk to you about the 3 facets of consciousness that you talk about in your book. So, explain the difference, the differences among the 3, and tell us how you help people achieve this kind of visionary, focus. All
right. Well, in the book, I mentioned 3 facets of consciousness: the superconscious, the conscious, and the subconscious. Mm-hmm. And the reason I mention that, and I consider those to be so important, is because all 3 have to work in concert to manifest anything. And I'll give a brief and quick explanation of each one. The superconscious is what I call the state where the imagination resides, where things that we find intangible reside. It's a superconscious state. It's not in this realm. It hasn't happened yet. We can imagine it, we can feel it, but it hasn't happened yet. Mm-hmm. The conscious state is where it manifests into reality. So we have the superconscious, imagination, the conscious, where we want to bring it to into reality, and the subconscious is a state where everything is recorded, our self-talk, our life experiences. And so we may start to visualize something in our imagination. We may want to bring it into the conscious state, but the subconscious begins to talk us out of it because of things our mother, our father, our friends may have told us. And the minute we have a great imagination, a great vision, that subconscious comes up and says, who do you think you are? Remember your mother said you're worthless? Mm-hmm. So you've got to retrain that, have the habits, have that self-talk change, and then you can begin to manifest it. And if you can't do that, then the other state doesn't even begin to manifest because you're crippled before you start.
Right, and then you're always stuck at a point. Now, you bring up something... you talk about utilizing courage to combat fear. And fear is not just fear. It's false evidence appearing real. It sounds so Gary Busey, because Gary's always taking words and he changes them. I mean, he gives an anagram, what's an acronym for them?
Acronym,
yeah. So what does false evidence appearing real, how do you deal with that in terms of fear?
Well, sometimes we get anxious about things that haven't happened, so it's false evidence. You start off on a path, or you go to give a speech, for example, and you begin to imagine the words. Again, that imagination starts. Well, what if I forget my words? What if I forget this? What if I do this? What if people don't like me? So it's the what if is what I call fear. And if you can overcome the what if and have the courage just to go ahead and see what would happen, then obviously you can manifest things into reality, but you have to overcome the what if. The what if hasn't happened yet. So why worry about it? Go into the arena and see what you can do. Then if something in reality does happen, then deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Do people respond to that when you explain this to them? Do they feel like, oh my gosh, that's what I'm doing? It's false evidence appearing real. I have to stop paying attention to that. There is no fear. I'm going to wait for the real evidence. I'm going to wait till I really fall on my face. No, I'm kidding. Okay, more with Linton Bergsen, author of the book Purposeful Vision. See your vision, know your purpose. Because I want to ask you all about luck. using your intuition for luck, living under correct knowledge. More with Linton Bergsen. You're listening to the Marilu Henner Show. Okay, in case you just joined us, we're talking to Linton Bergsen. He's the author of the book Purposeful Vision. See your vision, know your purpose. Okay, and we're talking about, we had already talked about fear, which is really false evidence, appearing real, which I love. And now I'd like to talk to you about how you describe accessing your own intuition for luck, living under correct knowledge. So what do you mean by all that?
Well, Marilu, living under correct knowledge is really having wisdom and common sense. In other words, if you want to reach a goal, if you want to do something in life, you have to be focused. You have to make sure that when you set the goal, that it is a goal that you can actually attain. You have to have everything in place. And you have to pursue it and be persistent and be committed to it. Now, these are principles that are put in motion, and most people who are very successful in life have these principles that they've set in motion to become or achieve whatever they set out to do. So living under correct knowledge, in my opinion, is basically applying principles that are common sense to achieve a goal, and then people will say, you were very lucky, weren't you? No, you weren't. You were very persistent. You had a plan, and you acted on it.
And where does reality sort of come into this? Because I was thinking about a friend of mine, her son is 5'8", and somebody said, well, did you tell your kids that they could do anything in life? Because she has very successful children. And she said, well, I told them they could do anything within reason. You know, if my son said, I want to be a basketball player, I would say to him, you make enough money doing something else so you can buy a team. You know, that was her funny way of saying, no, you're not going to be a basketball player, but maybe you can do something else and you'll be around basketball players all the time. So what do you say to someone who has kind of an unrealistic goal? Is that what living under correct knowledge means? A realistic goal? Because people might look at one kind of goal and say, oh my God, that's ridiculous. This person's never going to achieve anything. And we've seen people do that like crazy. Do you know what I mean? So where's the line there?
It has to be realistic. One of the things that I stress when people are goal setting, and it's a part of an acronym called SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and tangible. That's how you look at achieving or setting a goal. So the realistic part is definitely there. You have to question yourself. And you have to really understand what is realistic to you. And you can ask people also, but some people have unrealistic expectations of themselves. And the way they need to find that out is by setting a goal and failing enough times and then honing themselves back in again and resetting another goal until they find out what is realistic.
Where do we seem to fail? Where do we make the biggest mistakes? Especially, are we seeing like a new generation come up, and are they having the same, I don't know, issues? Are they, when you think about the path to what you want as being sort of stepping stones heading in a right direction, adding all of these things, layering upon layering, all of, the vision, the focus, everything else that you're saying realistic. Is there some place where we kind of drop off the most?
Absolutely. The main place that we drop off the most is in our personal leadership. It is a single most important criteria that you're going to have to work on. In other words, your personal leadership is how you lead yourself personally in every situation, and the work that you've done on yourself to find out who you want to become and who you are now. I call that a gap analysis. A lot of people don't want to do the work on themselves, but they want to achieve an awful lot.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with a certain discipline, and a work ethic.
Well, absolutely, Marilu. You can't do anything that's your personal leadership.
Yeah.
You don't own those as a personal trait, or if you didn't have them, you taught yourself to have them. Then that was a personal decision you made to lead yourself differently in your life. You chose to change your behavior.
Right. Now, what about with kids? I mean, what do you recommend to parents who say, hey, I can see my kids are sort of growing up with either bad habits or my child's not very confident or my kid is overly confident? How do you guide parents in helping their kids find the right balance so that they can become visionaries and use their imagination and not get talked out of things and yet still have that personal leadership, at the front burner?
Encourage the children to use their imagination. And when children want to come from that dream place, that imagination, saying they can see themselves doing this. As small children, they may say, I want to do this. I'd like to try this. I want to be this when I grow up. Encourage them to try and pursue that. Encourage them to try and pursue that imagination. And don't have them talk themselves out of it. And most importantly, don't you talk them out of it. And then help them with their behaviors, help them to be accountable. Teach them what it is to be accountable. As a good parent, we're not their friends. We have to teach our children behaviors, accountability, to use their imagination, to be realistic. We can guide them, but we mustn't discourage them.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times, kids get talked out of things, and then, it's like if you overcome a resistance, a worse one pops up. You resolve resistances, So let's say my friend with the son who wasn't very athletic and kind of on the short side, if he wanted to be a basketball player, and she said, no, make enough money to buy a team, do something else so you can make enough money to buy a team. By just squashing his basketball dreams, I mean, he did play a little bit of basketball when he was 8, it would have been the wrong thing to do. I mean, I think sometimes, your kid may say, oh, I want to do this, and so you let them do it, and then they might find some other love as a result. But I think a lot of times parents, keep their kids from exploring some things. I can't tell you how many times people who have become very successful in show business have said, my mom never encouraged me, and I found, it wasn't until I got to high school and there was a teacher who kind of believed in me, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, I think you should always be encouraging with your children and their dreams, because you never know. It may not be the dream you have for them, and maybe it's not the dream they ultimately fulfill for themselves, but there might be another one as a result of being exposed to that dream.
Yeah, you have to allow them to make their own mistakes so they learn from them.
Oh, yeah.
So
I think
encourage them, because, one of the things I always ask people when they say they want to be something, let's say your friend has the child who's 5'8", wants to be a basketball player, right? So you say to the kid, why? What's prompting you to want to do that? Get into finding out what's prompting the person. Why did you come up with that? And find what's the underlying reasons. Get to know people at their core level. Get to know your children at the core level. Don't just poo-hoo people and put them aside. There's a reason why that was mentioned, right, Marilu?
Right, absolutely.
Find out why.
Yeah.
And then the kid will learn, I've got to express myself when I say something. I have to be able to explain why I want to do that. And if I can't articulate that clearly and precisely, I won't get very far in life.
Do you think that people back off even from themselves? I mean, forget about parents who might be, talking to kids and trying to say, hey, well, wait a minute, I want you to be a doctor like, your grandfather, like a lawyer like your dad or your mom. Is it that we talk ourselves out of things too?
Yeah, I think that what happens to us is that for whatever reason we get involved in conditioning. And we have so much around. I mean, you look at what's on the TV, you look at what's in newspapers and the magazines, and what we believe we should be. That condition infiltrates our very subconscious state, which I talked about earlier. And so we think that we should be a certain something. I think that condition ruins us.
Oh, my gosh. And especially nowadays with everybody on YouTube becoming a sensation, and everybody can be their own television show and their own, rock star and actor and everything else. Anyway, thank you so much for being with us. Linton Bergsen, the author of the book Purposeful Vision. See your vision, know your purpose. You can find a link up at marilushow.com. Thank you so much for being with us. And I think everybody should remember, fear is just false evidence appearing real, and luck is living under correct knowledge. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.